All right. Hey, my name is Ben. I'm the director of content here at Expel, and I have with us today Ethan Chen, senior product manager of cloud strategy, who is talking with us about Kubernetes. And so we're just going to hop into it, Ethan. These are some super high level questions about Kubernetes for anybody who may be interested in Kubernetes and specifically why Kubernetes is tricky from a security perspective. And so I got a couple of questions, and we're just going to run through these. Are you prepared? Are you ready?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Let's do
yeah.
it.
Let's do it, man. All right. For those unfamiliar, can you briefly explain what Kubernetes is and why it's so widely used within modern development?
Yeah. So Kubernetes is kind of a project that sprung out of Google and their experience, right, with running different distributed systems. They wanted to contribute that to the community. And why it's so widely used is because it really helps you manage your fleet of containers, right? So as different workloads have moved to containerized applications, you can kind of imagine you'll have hundreds, thousands, maybe even millions of containers, right? And you need some sort of tool to manage them, to be able to make sure all your containers are operating correctly, they don't have any vulnerabilities, and you're achieving your uptime objectives, what have you, right? So Kubernetes is this kind of tool to manage those clusters of containers that really helps enable developer velocity and really helps move that migration from the traditional monolith 3-tier web app to this composable kind of construct here that is more adaptable to the modern kind of cloud architecture and cloud application development, right? I would just say one last thing is it really helps abstract some of the different components in the cloud and managing cloud applications. And Kubernetes helps just, provide a couple layers, a couple of components to manage that abstraction. So you don't have to think about all the itty little details, right?
Here's a fun fact for you. You may not know this one. Do you want to know why Kubernetes is actually abbreviated K8s? Do you know this?
I know this. So the 8 letters.
There's 8 letters between the K and
Yeah.
the S. There you go. That's exactly right. So before I joined Expel, I was with a cloud security provider, and we did a lot of work with Kubernetes, and I was so proud. I was so proud when I learned that about Kubernetes. So, all right, let's jump into the security side. So, Kubernetes offers agility and flexibility, but there are definitely security challenges. It's a complex technology to secure. Why is it so challenging from a security perspective compared to other environments?
Yeah, so it's definitely very highly dynamic and complex, kind of like what you were saying, right? And I kind of alluded to that just with the number of containers you're managing, right? So if you think about the cloud, it's already very ephemeral. You're like spinning up things, tearing down things. And with Kubernetes, it kind of just takes that to 11, right? Just the number of components that you have to manage, right? So if you think about it, you have each Kubernetes cluster, and each Kubernetes cluster has many nodes, right? And then within those nodes, you have many different pods, right? And then within those pods, you have many different containers. So it becomes this huge
It's like a
mess
Russian
thing.
Russian doll nightmare is what we're
Exactly. You
dealing.
have to manage all that, and they all have to be able to talk to each other, right? So it's a huge attack surface, and there's lots of noise and action happening all at the same time. And it's not even you can't even reliably attribute it to like a specific container, right? Because you could totally throw that away. It will totally be destroyed, and you spin up a new container, right? So huge amounts of noise, very hard to attribute, very hard to understand context. So to make it all operational, right, to really think about and manage IAM, RBAC, configurations, encryption, and there's just so much to think about, right?
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. When you have everything sort of embedded inside of everything else, getting to sort of the root issues seems like it would be quite a challenge. So we wrote a blog on Kubernetes, and it uses a cargo shipping analogy to describe a Kubernetes architecture. How does this analogy help readers understand Kubernetes components?
And the goal here was really trying to create a mental model, right? So how do we think about these components? And how do these components relate to each other, right? Because it's a very technical subject, and at least for me, it was very helpful to kind of piece something together that I already understood to help me understand, okay, here are how nodes and pods relate to each other, how containers relate to each other, and everything else, right?
Mm.
And that I think just makes the technology a lot more accessible. And we're all about accessibility and transparency here at Expel, right? So being able to understand these components helps you define your attack surface, right? And those are kind of inputs you need for your monitoring strategy, your logging strategy, your security posture strategy, and also at the end of the day, the controls you have for your organization, right?
Yeah.
And this just helps you build defense in depth, especially given how powerful Kubernetes is for, number one, your developers, but also number two, the different threat actors that could take advantage, right, of Kubernetes.
I know one of the things that we mentioned in the blog was crypto jacking attack that occurred back in 2018 with Tesla. That was sort of it was kind of a high profile crypto jacking attack, and it was in a Kubernetes environment. And I would assume that it was successful because a lot of times those sorts of attacks, at least for my understanding, these sorts of low and slow attacks like crypto jacking and data exfiltration will sort of embed themselves into your environment and just kind of suck your resources away without you really noticing a difference. I feel like Kubernetes is especially susceptible to an attack like that because it's so complex. Like, is that true? Like, is there some merit to that?
Yeah, I would say the complexity, right, with Kubernetes, kind of lends itself to the, wide attack surface it has. And that will create more of that, risk to those sorts of attacks like cryptojacking, right? And I think with Kubernetes itself, it has just so much power to spin up so many containers that you can mine crypto much better, and there's a higher ROI, higher payoff for the attacker.
What advice would you give to security teams who are beginning to secure a Kubernetes environment?
Yeah, we might have touched upon this a little bit earlier, but right, of course, I would say start small, right? So don't just, shift all your applications to Kubernetes and containers and assume everything will be okay, right? I would think about the first application you might want to do a test case with Kubernetes, right? And then see what kind of experiments you can run there to figure out your security strategy and also your operational strategy, right? And within that small experiment, initially, of course, focus on visibility, right? And like we talked about, making sure you understand what's going on, you can diagnose the issues, and refine from there. And then after that, you want to focus on configuration, right? So think about making sure you minimize the cluster misconfiguration, you kind of define some more blueprints and what have you, and then moving on to, say, IAM least privilege, right? So looking at RBAC and the different types of ways you can kind of lock down the privileges and the blast radius within Kubernetes itself. And then finally, looking more at the cluster-specific privileges, right? So security context, seccomp, emissions controller, and trying to create those layers of defense, and then just experiment with that small deployment before slowly rolling out and seeing from that experience how you can deploy it across the rest of your organization.
Yeah, if you don't have a solid foundation, if you try to scale up a foundation with a bunch of issues in it, you're gonna have a problem.
A hard time, yeah.
A hard time, definitely. One final question. We're at time, but I have one final question for you. We have this ritual at Expel where we usually start our meetings, but we're going to end this one with a very important question. So I have here in this mug, I have a piece of paper with a very important question on it. So
Okay.
I'm going to pull it out. And here's the very important question. Ethan, are you prepared?
I'm ready.
You're ready. Would you rather fight one elephant-sized duck or 100 duck-sized elephants? Go.
I'll take the 100 duck-sized elephants. They're duck-sized. What can I do?
Listen, without hesitation, ladies and gentlemen, Ethan Chen is fighting 100 duck-sized elephants. I gotta say, I'm gonna agree. I don't even want to think about coming in contact with an elephant-sized duck.
I think I would be in shock. I mean, it's so large, and then it can fly too.
Yeah, and I gotta say too, ducks can be pretty mean.
Yeah.
My kids and I sometimes will go up to a park up here, and they've got a bunch of ducks you can feed, and you would think they would be more thankful for the food we're giving them, but all they're trying to do is just attack us, and it's a problem.
Yeah.
Cool, man.
Happy you didn't say geese.
The geese are way worse. Hey, thank you for joining us, Ethan Chen. This was really great, and appreciate your insights on Kubernetes.
Happy to talk.